I gotta be honest, it was just such a cathartic relief to watch that first episode. Not only to see him just be as fucking on point and funny as ever, but to hear him say what a lot of, I'm sure, American voters are thinking, just to say it out loud, and what everyone on the left always just gets fucking dogpiled on by the libs. If you even for a moment want to criticize Joe Biden or any of his policies, you will just get this onslaught of blue no matter who, blue fucking the I'm with her wavists just pile in there being like, oh, so get another Trump supporter is outed. Yeah, the left is the exact same as the right. Horseshoe theory much? Yes, Jon Stewart is back as the host of The Daily Show. I believe exclusively, is it just Mondays until the election? So it's just a temporary little return, but a glorious one nonetheless. I know I'm going to sound like an old-ass millennial right now, but I did grow up, watching Jon Stewart pretty religiously, both as a lover of comedy and a news addict. It was a perfect combination of the two, and oftentimes he was pretty fair and or balanced, I might say, by going after, say, Hillary Clinton quite a bit, as well as going after Donald Trump, and doing a little less of the politics that you see today of team sports, right? Because we're going to talk a little bit about team sports and how everyone is losing their minds. All the liberals are losing their minds. The blue no matter who, the blue non-cultists are really, really mad that Jon Stewart's first segment back was to talk about how old the two presidential candidates are. Now, I don't know if I can really play any of the episode if you haven't already seen it. It's actually free on YouTube. They posted the first episode up on the YouTubes. That's where I watched it. And it was pretty great to see. One, obviously, I know, and fair dues, the nostalgia berries were just like smothering all over my face. All right. Yes, there was something really, really just wholesome and nostalgic about seeing Jon Stewart not only return and be just as fucking funny as he was back in the day, from the characters to the voices to, I don't even know if he had the same writing staff working with him, because he was even doing that darling thing where he looks at the camera and he talks about how old he is. And he's just like, look what the ravages of time have wrought upon me, things like that. But the point of the segment, if you haven't seen it already, is basically that it's not wrong for Americans or voters to question why they have to pick between the two oldest candidates in U.S. history. And when both candidates are showing signs of, mental decline or the inability to remember dates, names, numbers, sometimes making statements, mixing up, the presidents of Mexico and Egypt, and stuff that on a world stage as a world leader is actually pretty important and crucial, that, yeah, there is certainly something to be said about people being concerned about that. And that's a valid concern to have. And that alone was just too much. Was he conflating the two candidates as being identical? No, that wasn't the point. Like, despite what people like Aaron Rupar might tell you, that wasn't the point of the segment. Like, so many people are like, can't believe Jon Stewart is doing the both sidisms. Can't believe he's comparing an outright fascist like Donald Trump to someone who's improved American lives better than any president in my lifetime, kind of shit like that. When it's like, the segment, first off, talked about how he was actually rooting for Joe, and Joe Biden in his initial, right after that report came out, he came in front of everybody and then it's like, okay, you know what, I'm going to make a couple zingers, got a couple good lines in there, and could have just, maybe taken a soft W and walked away, came back and then started doing a lot of the Joe Biden gaffes that everyone's kind of gotten used to seeing at this point. And he did a whole like, no, like, why would you do that? I mean, I probably play like 2 seconds before I get, actually, no, you know what? YouTube is going to be so strict on this. I can probably already tell. I can't even watch David Dole's segment on it. It's probably going to put something. I'll play you the one clip where he does mention, I wonder if even playing the clip where he mentions Israel and Palestine is going to be enough to have YouTube strike me. We'll try. It's 19 seconds. Let's roll the dice on 19 seconds.
By the way, the response in Gaza has been over the top. I like how Biden describes Israel's incessant bombing of civilians the same way my mother talks about the Super Bowl halftime show. It was a little much. By the way.
All right. Oh, is YouTube still up? YouTube still running? No problems yet? Whew. All right, we did it. We made it. We got a single Jon Stewart clip in there. But But yeah, fantastic to see, especially like, directly calling out the indiscriminate bombing of the civilians, which is 100%, which is happening, turning that into, a joke. I'm sure a lot of people are pissed off to see. There was a massive cry amongst liberals that, we need to, if only Jon Stewart were around in this time, he would have the clarity that is necessary for the moment. And again, his opening segment being one in which he talks a lot of shit about Donald Trump. All right. He shows a bunch of fucking clips of Donald Trump not remembering names, not remembering dates. He shows clips of Donald Trump and the rest of his criminal ass family, the Nepo babies of the Trumps, which I had completely forgotten how glorious it's been to not have to see them every fucking day. Like, that was one of the nightmares of the Trump administration, is just every single day you'd have to see Ivanka or one of the two sons that he doesn't really love, like, have to get in front of the press because it's like, the president's son wants to make a statement and we have to listen to him. He is, after all, the president's son. So here he goes. But yeah, playing a whole bunch of clips about that. At no point did he say the policies of Donald Trump and Joe Biden are identical in every way. They are the same person, one and the same. The point of it is that, yes, this is an election, but it really fucking reflects how everyone feels, not just Americans, but the world, having to watch Americans go through this when, yes, the decision made on behalf of Americans affects everyone, and have to choose between the two oldest candidates in American history. And that's okay to say that. It's okay to criticize that. It's okay to say we should be able to demand better than this. That's not the same as Jon Stewart doing a segment on the glory of Orange Man and why he wants Orange Man to ascend the throne and why Orange Man is the only guy for the job. Two very different statements altogether. Didn't stop a whole bunch of press saying that he pretty much said that, though. Is Jon Stewart still the right person to host The Daily Show? The comedy vet makes his return to the desk he left in 2015 this evening, but his, quote, both sides are equally bad approach may not translate. I don't know if he truly gets like how important this moment is, and he's saying both sides are equally bad, right? That was the point of this. Whenever a popular sitcom or drama from years ago tries to come back, I worry. The series that we love, so often a product of a specific moment in time for the people who make them, the characters on them, and the people watching. Change that moment, things start to feel wrong. Can even leave the audience questioning why they liked the original run in the first place. The Daily Show isn't exactly those kind of shows. Though hosts and correspondents work with scripted jokes and often play exaggerated characters, but it's also been on the air in one form or another for nearly 30 years. But tonight brings the high profile as a revival of TV has seen in a minute with the return of the series' most famous incarnation, The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. But what should feel like a triumph instead feels kind of sad for both Stewart and The Daily Show itself. For the first time, he succeeded Craig Kilborn in 1998. Through the time Bruce Springsteen closed out the farewell episode in 2015, Stewart had about as sterling a reputation as there is in the comedy business, and to a weird degree in the news business. Though The Daily Show was meant to be a parody of cable news over Stewart's tenure, the actual versions began to feel much more like self-parody, that many younger viewers began treating Stewart as their primary news source. Whoa, I feel cold out here. Media writers, too. In 2004, the Television Critics Association gave it an Outstanding Achievement News and Information Award to Stewart in 60 Minutes, Nightline, and other traditional news stalwarts. He delivered an appropriately incredulous acceptance speech. Night after night, Stewart took a scalpel to the hypocrisy and the double talk of the people he was covering. Whether there were... Did you not write that line and just feel the burning sense of irony? Did it not hurt you? Was your skin not crawling a little bit? Or like, I'll leave it in. Leave it in. Whether they were newsmakers or people who claimed to just report the news, he wore his heart on his sleeve, struggling to get through first episode after 9/11, and closing that show by putting a puppy in his desk as the only thing he could think fit to lift his audience spirits in the dark moment. Well, I mean, I guess I could do the same thing. Hey, look at... Oh, good timing. He went extra cute just then. Oh, you beautiful little potato. I love him so much. He was, to so many passionate viewers, a calming, sensible voice in an increasingly irrational political and media landscape. In 2015, Stewart stepped down from the job. He was understandably exhausted for doing shows a week for nearly 2 decades, but there was also a sense the moment had passed. Among the core tenets of the Stewart's Daily Show was that both sides of the aisle, the Congress and on cable, weren't really to be trusted, and that America's biggest problem had become our inability to stop yelling at another. This was crystallized in 2010's rally to restore sanity and or fear. Stewart left the Daily Show in the early days of Donald Trump's blah, blah, blah. Let's get to today. Noah gone, still doesn't happen, Comedy Central, high profile. Okay, here we are. Sarah Silverman with Junior mysteriously dropped out of running. Please hire host. That still hasn't happened, though Comedy Central has settled on a high-profile temporary solution. Starting tonight and running through the election, Stewart will return as host every Monday night with correspondents Helming every other week for 3 episodes. The case of mutual needs aligning. Stewart doesn't have a platform or another potentially huge moment in American history, and The Daily Show somehow hasn't been able to find a permanent host. But it's not a great look for either party. On top of the question as to whether Stewart wants to reorient his comedic approach in a way in a year where Trump is dealing with multiple criminal and civic trials. Did you not know that, John? Could someone tell him? Could someone tell Jon Stewart? I think he forgot. Well, at the same time, having a non-zero chance of being elected president again. And even if returning to his old home reinvigorates both himself and the series, it still creates the problem of what The Daily Show does after. It's an old cliche, but when you never want to be the guy who replaced the legend because it's better to be the guy who replaces that guy, Trevor Noah ran a good show while always under Jon Stewart's shadow, which is a problem that a successor wouldn't have to deal with. Instead, whoever gets a job will have to do it while Stewart still work there will be fresh in everyone's minds. That was your fucking takeaway from that episode. I gotta be honest, it was just such a cathartic relief to watch that first episode, not only to see him just be as fucking on point and funny as ever, but to hear him say what a lot of, I'm sure, American voters are thinking, just to say it out loud, and what everyone on the left always just gets fucking dogpiled on by the libs. If you even for a moment want to criticize Joe Biden or any of his policies, you will just get this onslaught of blue no matter who, blue fucking the I'm with her wavists just pile in there being like, oh, so guess another Trump supporter is outed. Yeah, the left is the exact same as the right. Horseshoe theory much? You know, shit like that. And yeah, it was wonderful to see that no, it's completely reasonable and a sensible discussion to criticize the current state of American politics for what it is. It's not wrong to be like, I think we could do better. I think we could demand better. And that's a different thing than saying, I want Donald Trump to win. Like those are two totally different statements, and to put it out there. And also, he ends that whole segment by basically, it's not a call to action in the traditional sense, but it is a reflection on that we will never have to stop fighting. And by we, I mean anyone who wants to fight for humanity, who wants to fight for, say, progressive values or leftist values, or even to fight up against tyranny, fascism, the oppression of minorities, the oppression of LGBTQ plus folk, all that kind of stuff. That battle never ends, and that every single time you think that you've won or you've made some headway, there's going to be fascists on the other side who are going to try and erode everything and then just shift the Overton window to make things suddenly acceptable that are just objectively horrifying. There's a reason why so many right-wingers were trying to promote and push Ye until they realized that he had just gone full Hitler. But prior to that, they were like, well, he's saying the things that we all want him to say. He's talking about how Jewish people control the media. That's the part we want to mainstream, so let's platform him and get him on here. Meanwhile, everyone else is like, that's not true. That's a anti-Semitic conspiracy theory, and the guy is clearly just a racist fucking asshole, and you'll all have to realize that for yourselves, to your embarrassment, as he just progressively states out loud what his actual intentions are. But you can see the attempt that is made there to shift the Overton window, thankfully in that case unsuccessfully. In other cases, they are amongst their own, social circles, pundit class, political class, shifting the Overton window to try and make it completely acceptable to go after LGBTQ plus people again in the worst vile ways that they were doing towards gay people in previous cycles of hate and bigotry, this time towards trans people. And that's where they're trying and have successfully amongst their own move the Overton window, where the things that are being said now would have been seen as abhorrent, as bigoted, as just fucking vile. They're now just echoed and reflected. Or look at how they've shifted the Overton window on, say, the Great Replacement conspiracy theory, something that was relegated to corners of Stormfront, that was relegated to the fucking Lauren Southerns and the Richard Spencers of the world, who are like, yes, there is an actual conspiracy to replace white people with other demographics so that they can now vote Democrat. And they've added certain little changes where it's like, okay, well, this isn't an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory, because I'm not saying that it's all Jewish people, but I probably will mention George Soros a number of times. But this is actually effectively to change demographics to replace the West. It's to replace Western voters. That's what this is. So it's to replace, let's just say, our superior civilization with inferior civilizations. And boom, just like that, the Overton window shifts, and more people than ever are saying that. Now the next presidential candidate is saying these kind of things out loud, where again, this kind of shit would be relegated to Stormfront. But apparently he's still both sidesing. Jon Stewart uses Daily Show return to equate Trump and Biden. The fate of The Daily Show was never more uncertain than in the weeks leading up to Comedy Central's Hail Mary decision to bring back Jon Stewart. On the one hand, the show had just won its first Emmy Award. Going to go through the history, blah, blah, blah. Now where was I? Stewart teased in the coming weeks and months that he would likely be using his reclaimed platform to talk about China and artificial intelligence, the two topics that reportedly Apple chose to cancel a show on the service, as well as something a little lighter, like Israel and Palestine. But for the first show back, he used Sunday night's Super Bowl as a way to getting into down to business on the race between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. These fucking guys. Over the next 17 minutes or so, Stewart laid out the battle between the two men, notably using footage of Trump and his adult children failing to recall various basic facts during their own depositions after Biden was tarred as a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory by special counsel Robert Hur. Yet, it turns out the leading cause of the early onset dementia is being deposed, the host joked. Stewart made a point to mock Biden's age-related gaffes as aggressively as he did Trump's, including everything from the president's unfortunate mix-up during an angry press conference that was intended to dispel the concerns to the bizarre TikTok videos he decided to post that made him look older. After briefly noting that Trump is also getting up to his age, Stewart asked, "What the fuck are we doing here, people?" While Biden has, quote, lost a step, he argued that Trump regularly says things at rallies that would warrant a wellness check, but his conclusion was that they are similarly challenged. One thing we know for certain is this: we have two candidates who are chronically outside of the norm of anyone who has run for the presidency in the history of this country, Stewart said, adding they are both stretching the limits of being able to handle the toughest job in the world. And he pushed back on the notion that voters must silence concerns and criticisms, making the case that it's the job of the candidates themselves. Finally, he considered, again, yes. Yeah, fucking yes. Holy fuck. What I would consider to be, again, not an extremist take is being labeled as some kind of radical, far leftist extremist fucking statement made by Jon Stewart in this regard. It's the same thing that is frequently done to people who are like, I'm disgusted that Joe Biden is actively supporting a campaign of ethnic cleansing of Palestinians in Gaza. That disgusts me. And then that's responded with, oh, so I guess you're a Trump supporter then. No, I never said that part. In fact, I'll acknowledge that Trump is worse on this issue and would be doing horrifying, if not worse things. The difference might be that he would say the quiet part out loud all the time. He would probably say very racist things about Palestinians. He would probably further try and dehumanize Palestinians. He wouldn't try and make statements that, oh yes, we really need to get critical aid into that region. But the effect and the loss of life is the same, regardless if someone is being openly and overtly racist and someone is just engaging in policies that directly dehumanize, target, and effectively aid a genocide in Gaza. So in this case, yeah, I am calling out what I think is fucked up policies of Joe Biden. That's not me saying the onus of this is not on the person criticizing Joe Biden in this case. It's on the Democrats. And once again, it's like, hey, by the way, don't criticize Joe Biden, because if you do that, you support Donald Trump. And it's like, as someone who doesn't want Donald Trump to be elected, everything Joe Biden is doing is a massive gift to Donald Trump. Voters are decidedly, and I would say fairly, disgusted by Joe Biden. They're calling him Genocide Joe. He's not listening to his voters, who overwhelmingly want a ceasefire. He's not listening to the constituents. He's not listening to his colleagues. He's not listening to his staffers. He's not listening to the hundreds of thousands of letters and emails that are coming in, from across the country, demanding he take a different stance on this. He's doing policies that are in opposite of what voters want. That would be a gift to Donald Trump. In key swing states where there are large Muslim and Arab populations, his support is non-existent now, where again, it is necessary that he has their support, and they were instrumental in helping him win his victory. And you are not going to have the canvassing. You're not going to have the knocking on doors. You're not going to have the people who are phone baking. That should upset you, because it helps get Donald Trump elected, And it's because of his fucking policies and what he is saying and doing out loud. That's where your anger should be, not at the people rightfully mad at that. If your guy loses, bad things might happen, but the country is not over, he said. And if your guy wins, the country is not saved. Later in the show, Jordan Klepper, the only current correspondent who started out under Stewart, jokingly called his boss snark and both sidesism. He imagined Stewart boiling the 2000 election down to George Bush is dumb, Al Gore is so boring, before adding, all you do is brainwash voters into accepting a corrosive status quo that they could be out marching in the streets to effect change. It was a funny bit that culminated with him changing his tune once he found out he'd be hosting the show for the end of the week, but Klepper had a point. Stewart famously left The Daily Show in 2015 when Trump was still that of a joke of a candidate who recently descended a golden escalator. And while no one, including Stewart, thinks comedy bits could have done anything to stop Trump from becoming president, he has what he wanted to return this year so that he could have some sway over the 2024 discourse. Like, I think once again, people have learned nothing, especially the Democratic establishment has learned nothing. You can't expect voters to want to support you in ways that takes time out of their days, especially when they are suffering immensely. Like if they're having trouble making ends meet, do you expect them to have the free time to, when they get off of their 1 or 2 jobs, to then pick up a phone and canvass for you, or donate some of the money to you that they have made from their salaries, or take any part in that, when you are not giving them a very key and strong issue that they are demanding for? And the other thing is going to be like, when the phone calls come in, the hundreds of phone calls, the hundreds of emails, the hundreds of letters, the hundreds of thousands, I should say, the people rightfully angry about this kind of stuff, to just ignore them, or to try and placate them, or to try and say like, let's get, Kamala Harris, the vice president of the United States, to make a statement. She's going to talk about how Islamophobia is really bad and how we have to do things to combat Islamophobia. That's not going to win back a lot of voters that you've lost. Younger voters, Muslim and Arab Americans who are justifiably disgusted by the policies of the Democrats. The idea that Hillary Clinton lost the election because sexism, or Hillary Clinton lost the election because racism, that's the only reasons, that like a key thing for a lot of voters, especially in like key swing states, was simply that they wanted a racist to win. I mean, not only is that going to further alienate any kind of like, undecided voter who may consider voting for Trump for other reasons, right? Who may not think of Trump in the same way you do, but it's also going to completely ignore a lot of realities on the ground as to why people may not want to keep voting for condescending blue liberals. That could alienate a large percentage of voters, and why ignoring that is to your peril. Afterwards, blaming Bernie bros, afterwards blaming progressives, squad members, and even blaming Bernie Sanders when he was one of the people who 100% towed the line and did what was necessary to suddenly canvass for Hillary Clinton, to suddenly speak and say that he was endorsing Hillary Clinton, to hold rallies for Hillary Clinton, all that kind of stuff. But still, of course, it's Bernie's fault, even though he is doing exactly what is asked of him. So far, it seems that sway includes using his whole platform to tell Americans their 2 choices for presidents are both not that different and equally terrible. Good job, Matt, senior editor. Okay, I've decided Jon Stewart did a good job. Keith Olbermann. Well, after 9 years away, there's nothing else to say. The both sidesists fraud, Jon Stewart bashing Biden, except please make it another 9 years. Jon Stewart complaining that 2024 is 2 old guys again is like me complaining that it's 2 white guys again. It misses the point and minimizes the stakes. 61-year-old Jon Stewart looked and sounded so tired and old, repeating tired and old material from almost a decade ago. Definitely past his prime. Incredibly sad. It is so sad. And again, this is going to be to the detriment of everyone who just ignores it, of everyone who just completely out of touch, doesn't recognize voters, and a lot of concerned voters who are either, like I said, disgusted, rightfully upset, they feel alienated, they feel politically homeless, they don't feel represented, and continuously just be like, well, you can't talk shit about Biden. If you talk shit about Biden, you're a Trump supporter. So I'm going to label you all as Trump supporters. And it's like, you keep labeling all these people as Trump supporters. You're just pushing them further and further away. Meanwhile, just aggressively ignoring the realities of what could be necessary to try and defeat Trump, right? But also, I should add that, Trump and the investigation is the only true way to defeat him. Let's make sure that dossier is exposed. All the secrets therein.
But I just want to share that this was a great moment. If I have any criticism of last night's episode, it's that there wasn't more of this. I hope in the future, and I expect Jon Stewart will dive deeper to Joe Biden and Donald Trump, essentially the election. And as Daily Show writes here, Jon Stewart kicks off the Daily Show's election coverage with a wellness check on America's two chronologically challenged candidates, Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Now,
oh, nice. Thanks,
before I get to some of the insane reaction to this segment, I want to show you what the White House said about Jon Stewart's return.
Is the president a fan of the Daily Show?
Oh, I'm not expecting that. I would have to ask him.
Did he watch Jon Stewart last night?
Sounds like you did, Jeff. Was it good?
He was pretty critical of the president
Oh,
as well
really?
as the former president. And I guess my question was,
He said this about President Biden.
he was critical of both.
Okay, got. Oh, you said as well as the former. I gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
All right, so Corinne Jean-Pierre seems a little surprised that Jon Stewart was critical of the president. Look, I'll get to more of the reactions in a bit here, but this idea that anyone at all should be surprised that Jon Stewart is criticizing a current president should maybe go back and watch some Jon Stewart,
I'd never watched the show.
This is what he has been doing his entire life. He criticizes people in power, people who are trying to attain power, the media, and it all comes from a place of authenticity and just fact-based reality. So anyone annoyed or surprised by that, you don't know who Jon Stewart is. This is what he has been doing forever. Now, I want to get to this. This honestly may be the dumbest reaction I've seen, and we're going to get to a lot of dumb reactions, but this may be the dumbest. This is from Fox News.
Do you think the Daily Show decided to do this because Greg's show's doing so well?
Absolutely. I definitely think that's one of the factors. And, you know, I was watching the Emmy Awards recently, and Gutfeld was left off the list, where he's besting these people not only in writing, but ratings.
Oh my God. Jon Stewart returned to the Daily Show and criticized Joe Biden, the president, because Gutfeld, the popularity of Gutfeld on Fox News. That's one
tough day for the Gutfeld fan.
Now, I don't know the rating situation. It's very possible that Gutfeld is doing the best in the ratings. Do you know why that is? Not to offend anybody here. Again, older people watch TV. Younger people don't.
They watch the internet. Yeah. Like me. Old people do too. Old people who are kind of tired of cable news. So there's that. But yeah, the demographics of Fox viewers are very, very old. It's one of the reasons why CNN went from being like, well, we're going to kind of take a center left approach to, you know what, let's move to the center right, because clearly people who watch television and who want to watch 24-hour news cycles most likely are going to be coming at those from a more, let's say, conservative standpoint due to the age demographics.
The people that still watch late night, I'm sorry, if you still watch late night every night, this is not, again, I don't mean offense by this, but you are likely...
It's not offensive. You're just stating that this is the demographics of people who consume television, and it is overwhelmingly, yes, more like I'm a millennial. I'm an older millennial, and I never once in my life bought cable packages. That wasn't because I was like, I have to fight the man and fight it was just like, it's just never been my thing. I can watch everything I want to watch via the internet. Even the early days of the internet, we had methods of watching television shows using the internet that were like commercial free, and using those methods we would be able to watch all the shows that we would want to see. So I was able to watch the shows I liked, not have to see commercials, not have to sit through the endless minutia of just the garbage and dreck that is on television. And then that, as it proliferated, became more and more accessible to everybody, and then everyone who didn't know how to use those methods, now has the ability to watch almost every single show on, you know, just by paying the same amount they would pay for cable, to have 5 or 6 of these streaming service sites, basically, over and over.
60 plus. That's, I don't mean you're even.
No, I would never download a car. Just to be clear, I would never download a car, just so everyone knows.
Old. But I just, my last video, or when I first mentioned Jon Stewart Return to the Daily Show, I jokingly said he was elderly. He's 61 years old. Oh man, the comments on that video from the elderly were really, really pissed at me. I at some point, I hope to be in my 60s or 70s.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an insult to say that you're elderly or you're old. When you're elderly and you're old, that in and of itself isn't the insult. The insult would come from saying something like all elderly people are blank. Then yes, then you're generalizing an entire group. Then I would say yes, you're decidedly being ageist, right? There's old people who have been on point politically their entire fucking lives, and I am in awe of that. It's not even so much that like I'm, you know, always consistently deathly afraid of every candidate being a part of a, you know, gerontocracy. It's that a lot of the candidates who are usually running seem to also be aligned with very at best, you know, center right policies, and at worst very right wing to far right policies.
Or 80s. So I don't mean to offend, but I'm just saying the generations that, you know.
Yes, 81 is old. It's old. That's, you're getting into great grandpa territory by 81 years old. It is like, it's not an insult to say that makes you an old person. By definition, once you pass 65, you're a senior citizen. You are a citizen who is a senior. That in and of itself isn't an insult. There's nothing wrong with being old. In fact, being old can bring a great many a thing with it, right? Not just the like the wisdom that comes with age and all that kind of stuff. Well, but what about the fact that like old people seem to be having way more extensive sex lives now than younger generations are? I mean, they're just fucking having senior home orgies and shit like that, and just having themselves a time, you know. It's not ageist to simply say that someone who is 81 years old is old. That in and of itself is not an ageist statement. Yeah, it's life. Yeah, exactly. Like Jon Stewart's joke. It's not ageism. It's lifetimeism.
Used to watch late night. They're not doing that anymore. The younger generations, they're on TikTok. They're on YouTube. They're on Instagram.
Literally switching to the oldies.
They're not watching late night comedy shows, except maybe for Jon Stewart now.
Yeah,
at least I am. So this idea that, you know, Gutfeld is this big deal. I'm sorry, Fox News, not the case. Let's get to the other reaction though. So this.
Hey, Chase Firth, thank you so much for the generous $1.99 donation. Thank you for the lulz, Lance. Appreciate you. Appreciate being appreciated. Very, very kind.
I'm trying to think of how to frame this, because there is MAGA, right? MAGA is the right, the Trump cultists. Then there are people who are Biden cultists, for lack of a better term here, that are really bothered that Jon Stewart is willing to criticize the Democratic Party or Democratic politicians or a Democratic president, which again is not new for him, but these people think this is a terrible approach. So here is the Rolling Stone with their headline: Is Jon Stewart still the right person to host?
We went through this article. It was bad.
May just be completely manufactured because we don't know who the people are. But this gets to you know, some of the sentiment you're seeing online. Jon Stewart complaining that 2024 is two old guys again is like me complaining that it's two white guys again. It misses the point and minimizes the stakes. It really appears here that Mr. Robinson completely missed the point himself.
Oh yeah, I saw people who were tweeting out a picture of voting demographics, like voter demographics, and who they're planning to vote for, and they were using that because there was a lower amount, obviously, of Gen Zers saying that they were ready to vote for Biden, saying like Gen Z will not save us, Gen Z is lost, and all this kind of stuff. And like I think it was Joe Lewis who flipped the whole thing. It was like, white people will not save us, because overwhelmingly, if there's any one demographic that shows that they are voting for Trump, it's white folks. So if you're going to play this whole game where you just look at this and say like, this is Gen Z's fault, Gen Z is not enthusiastically supporting Biden in the way that other you know, groups or demographics are, well then yeah, you can flip the whole thing on its head and point it out that way.
Watching or not watching the segment as a person or not real person, here is some a quote from the segment, the first 20 minutes. Jon Stewart saying here, what's crazy is thinking that we are the ones as voters who must silence concerns and criticisms. It is the candidate's job to assuage concerns, not the voter's job not to mention them. This also goes to a very important point. Jon Stewart has the ear of politicians. He has a platform and a voice that actually reaches the mainstream in a way that very few do. Democratic politicians are willing to listen to him in a way that they will not with many others who are willing to criticize them. So when you have a platform the way that Jon Stewart does, and the ability or the voice that actually reaches the ears of people in power, it would be malpractice not to utilize that to criticize those people publicly. Because what Jon Stewart here is doing is telling Democrats, hey, get your shit together, because there are clearly some issues that you need to clean up. And if they're not cleaned up, there's going to be a problem come the election. And it is not on the fault of the voters for not being willing to ignore your problems. It is the fault of you for not making those changes. This was one of the ultimate points, and I'll get to another point, great point he made at the end of this video. But this was one of the big takeaways here. And again, understanding Jon Stewart is in a unique position, which is why it's important that he uses his voice in this way. Another hilarious reaction here. This is from Tim. 61-year-old Jon Stewart looked and sounded so tired and old, repeating tired old material from almost a decade ago. Definitely past his prime. Incredibly sad. This is, again, for me, it was like he never left. He was just as good as he ever was. I highlighted this, though. Tired old material. It would not be possible for Jon Stewart to repeat tired old material on The Daily Show, because The Daily Show is a satirical news show. The things that Jon Stewart says is based on the news that he is observing. So unless Joe Biden and Donald Trump were the two candidates for president 9 years ago, it's not possible for Jon Stewart to recycle old material. I would love to know, again, if Tim is a real person, I want direct quotes from Jon Stewart last night compared to Jon Stewart 9 years ago, or 9+ years ago. Show me the repeating of the old material, because you will not find it. This is a completely made up criticism that is based in nothing. Now let's get to real people. So Aaron Rupar here, who I'm not going to go too far in on here. I utilize the clips that he uses, that he shares online. So I am biased in this regard. I like Aaron, despite me disagreeing with some of the things that he has espoused on Twitter.
See what else he said.
Of Trump, it's certainly done.
It's also super weird that Aaron came back the next day to make the same statement and double down on it once again. Like, learned absolutely nothing from the criticism that he had received.
Inspire anyone to vote. Again, this was the first episode. We are 9 months away, and anyone that is swayable, anyone that you can get to vote that isn't already going to vote, is not going to be fooled by Democratic talking points. Keith Olbermann here, the ultimate moron. Well, after 9 years away, there is nothing else to say to the both sides' fraud Jon Stewart bashing Biden, except please make it another 9 years. Keith Olbermann, or as I call him, Keith Stupidman.
You got to take that fucking soundboard away. That soundboard is dangerous. David has shown he cannot wield its power.
I watched The Daily Show, obviously, last night, and I'm like, you know what? I need a crowd of laughter. But what a moron. Like,
if you don't know, by the way, if this was before your time, Keith Olbermann was pretty much kind of supposed to be like the who's the Fox News host, previous to Tucker Carlson, who was Glenn Beck? No, not Glenn Beck, after Glenn Beck. He was supposed to be like the Bill O'Reilly. He was supposed to be the antithesis to Bill O'Reilly. Bill O'Reilly was this Fox News, the most popular at most times, cable news host on television, and was obviously very, very right wing. And then Keith Olbermann on NBC would be like the juxtaposition to that, and he would have segments like, today we have the 6 stupidest people or dumbest people in the world. Number 6, Bill O'Reilly, that kind of like, kind of sensationalist, but, I'm on your side, so it's okay that I'm going to get really aggressive on your people kind of stuff. And then when he left NBC, he starts this GQ YouTube show. And the whole thing is he does it in the vein of that old black and white, I know names are just escaping me right now, that old famous newscaster, I don't think it was Walter Cronkite, but similar to that where, basically the era of newscasters where they became more than simply people who read the news headlines. They became voices of the people. And then their messaging became an important political weapon, and that he would, good night and good luck. And like, that sign off would make people feel safe and warm at home. And they would know that their host was going to be there the next day. And that when he came on, he was going to, he tried to do that. But like, you can't just make that happen because it's you. So he called the show like The Resistance, and the whole thing was about him defeating Donald Trump, and defeating Donald Trump not in the ways that bore fruit in the whole, like, the investigation is here, the Mueller investigation now it is unequivocal that at any moment Donald Trump is going to be arrested and put into shackles. Now any day we are only moments away from Donald Trump. And then he just quit the show with the weirdest sign off, that was kind of like, hey, everybody, it is now 100% confirmed without a shadow of a doubt that Donald Trump will be arrested and taken down. And Edward Morrow, thank you very much. Oh man, hell's only, good call. He's now going to be put into shackles, and he will spend the rest of his days rotting in prison. So it is with a heavy heart that I am choosing to stop this show and end it by saying to you all, like, good night and good luck, kind of moment. And I was just like, what the fuck? You can't just you can't do this. You can't have a YouTube channel show on GQ where you pretend to be this like voice of the people. This is this important personality, and then amass, I'm sure a significant following of people who suddenly start to be, Keith's our guy. He's the one telling the truth now. He's going to save us, and then just be like, my job is done. Exit stage right, when, as you all know, as history has shown, that wasn't what actually happened. When the Mueller report came out, it wasn't so damning that Donald Trump was completely excised from his position and then removed from power and all that kind of stuff, right?
What is there's nothing even here, because again, it did not both sides anything. I swear, it's just,
yeah, it was very anticlimactic.
I'm not going to spend too much time worrying about Keith Olbermann. Sawyer Hackett here with a good point. If you have a problem, and this guy, by the way, I believe is a Democratic strategist. Here, consultants, has worked, or is the senior advisor of Julian Castro. Look at that. So somebody who works with the Democratic Party. If you have a problem with Jon Stewart, or with Stewart presented, if you have a problem with Stewart, I guess he means how. I read this weird. If you have a problem with how Jon Stewart presented the dynamics of this race, you have your head buried in the sand and haven't talked to a regular voter in 3 years. Great point. And this is, again, coming from the Democratic Party. Anonymous Lefty, who, this person has like no following, but I follow them and they always make good points. So Anonymous Lefty with a really wild username, again, may not even be a real person, but considering the points they make, I have to assume they're real. Says these people want him to go on a preachy monologue calling Trump Cheeto Mussolini for 20 minutes because that's what they've come to expect from liberal comedy. This, for me, yes, I read this and I was like, why didn't I like this yet? This has to be part of the problem. Jon Stewart's been gone for so long that people forgot what actual satire is. So when Jon Stewart returns and acknowledges reality as a part of his comedy, some people are offended by that. But a great point here made by Anonymous Lefty. And the last thing I want to end on here is, this is straight from Jon Stewart's segment. This is right near the end of the segment. I've learned one thing over these last 9 years, and I was glib at best and probably dismissive at worst about this, which also goes to the fact that Jon Stewart has grown and changed and learned as a person. The work of making this world resemble one that you would prefer to live in is a lunch pail job. Day in, day out, where thousands of committed, anonymous, smart, and dedicated people bang on closed doors and pick up those that are fallen and grind away on issues till they get a positive result. And even then, have to stay on to make sure that result holds. So the good news is, I'm not saying you don't have to worry about who wins the election, which again, kind of hits the point where people are claiming both sides. He's not saying that. I'm saying you have to worry about every day before it and every day after forever. Going to the ultimate point here, that regardless of who's in charge, who's in power,
ultimately, you know what it was? Jon Stewart was like, hey, Democrats, get your shit together. And then all the liberals are like, whoa, he's criticizing our shit. How dare you speak ill of our shit? No one says that. That's our shit. You know? That's what it felt like the whole reaction to it was.
Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Can you please hit the like and subscribe button and maybe leave a comment? It really does help the videos out. But first, the people who produce everything you see before you and make this entire channel possible: Amazing Fletch, Anna Loves Riley, Ariane McCarthy, Cheryl Alvarez, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Hagbard Salim, Multimondi, Omni, Peanut Butter Blondie, Political Puppy, Quiet 185, Rachel K, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Ruby K, Cernicus, Spinach Monster, Stellar Vision, Sebastian Demel, Trevbot.exe, Words Greenwood, and Travis McClinton. And also, thank you to every other person who helps fund this show. Their names are on the screen right now. It would not be possible without every single one of them. We cannot thank you enough. And if you want to join the Patreon, please come to patreon.com/theserfs and help us exist.